It's time for On the Way, our weekly segment on all things considered, breaking down the week's transit news. Joining us is WNYC's transportation reporter Stephen Nesson and Ramsey Khalife and editor Clayton Guza. Transit played a central role in this year's mayoral election that just wrapped up this week. Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani made buses a key part of his campaign. Here he is repeating his pledge during his victory speech on Tuesday.
We're going to make buses fast and...
So in this segment, we've all pointed out time and time again, right, that New York City's mayor has a lot of power to make buses fast, maybe not so much power to make them free. Ramsey and Stephen, you two were out in the field on election night. What did Mamdani supporters say about his bus plan?
I was posted up at the watch party in Queens with Make the Road New York, which focuses on immigrant rights. And it was a mix of people who say anything to make transportation more affordable and better would be welcome. I think there was a healthy dose of realism about who controls the MTA, but most folks agreed free buses is an important and worthwhile goal to pursue. Mm-hmm. One of the folks there was 42-year-old Diane Ramirez. She's a public school teacher. She canvassed for Mamdani and says she doesn't want to put pressure on him, but yeah, she expects free buses.
We're able to do the Staten Island ferry, for example. That's free transportation. We were able to provide free buses during COVID. New York City is the municipality that brings in the most money. So I just feel like these are things that can improve the quality of life of a lot of New Yorkers.
Of course, as we've reported, there are millions of bus riders and considerably fewer ferry riders.
Yeah. And I reported during election night at a community center in Kensington with Mamdani's Muslim and South Asian voters. But the thing that most excited them for his mayoralty is not that he too is Muslim and South Asian, but that his policies to help address the affordability crisis. Interesting. So I spoke with several attendees, and the policy I kept hearing about is this free bus program. One supporter told me that Mamdani maybe has a new style of governing, of leadership. They said he has the power now, and he'll make housing more affordable and buses and childcare free. People are really pushing and rallying behind this.
Okay.
I mean, of his four main campaign pledges, this might be the hardest one to execute. Hochul's largely signed on to childcare, at least politically. Rent freeze can happen through the Rent Guidelines Board. They may be complicated, but it's something that he feasibly could do. The free grocery store pilot is a relatively small initiative. Free buses is going to cost at least $700 million, and he doesn't. And the MTA is a state-controlled agency. The MTA is poo-pooing it. Jano Lieber last week was saying, hey, it might cost even more than $700 million. It could cost up to $1 billion a year. So they'll need to find money from the city budget or from new taxes that have to be approved from the state to replace that revenue. There's also the problem of the MTA's so-called bondholders, right? The MTA takes out debt to pay for transit improvements and construction, and it pays it back with mass transit fares. If you get rid of a whole fare revenue stream, the bondholders are going to say, hold on a minute, we need some other dedicated revenue before we sign off on that, right? There's a lot of masters here of the fare to consider. So it's going to be really tricky to navigate, and how and when and if and what version he executes this is really going to, I think, be a yardstick for how he's measured against his campaign promises moving forward.
Yeah. But let's remember, the other half of his promise is to make buses faster. That might be an easier pursuit to go forward on. So in order to get rid of the fare payment, you would maybe contribute a couple minutes to people of saving of time getting on the bus, getting off of it. But the real change really lies in adding more bus lanes or dedicated busways. So on the campaign trail, he's promised to meet legal requirements of the Streets Master Plan, which says that the city must build at least 30 miles of protected bus lanes every single year.
Okay. It's a law that Adams has ignored every year in office.
as an important addendum there. Now, on the other side of the Hudson, Democrats scored a big win when Mikie Sherrill won the New Jersey governor's race. Stephen, in this week's newsletter, you highlight the controversy around the planned Gateway tunnels that may have helped her win the race.
Polling had indicated that Mikie Sherrill and Republican Jack Ciattarelli were in a pretty tight race. Ciattarelli had the backing of President Trump, and then Trump started trashing the Gateway project.
Right.
Remember, on the first day of the shutdown, him and his budget director threatened to cut funding for infrastructure projects. And then Trump just upped the ante by saying Gateway is terminated. And for Ciattarelli, it kind of put him in a tough position because he totally backed Trump. But here's the president trashing a project that would really help New Jersey residents. Mm-hmm. The morning after the election, Sherrill credited her support of Gateway as playing a role in her win. I spoke to Dan Casino, professor of government and politics at Fairleigh Dickinson University in Madison, New Jersey, who says probably did help turn out voters.
It doesn't seem like a determinative issue in northern Jersey because most of your commuters in northern New Jersey who are commuting into the city, well, those are already voters who are pretty heavily Democratic. I think it probably helped with turnout. We did see turnout in those areas, and Essex County, Union County really go up in the cycle.
He says voting totals were up 20% compared to 2021.
Right, and just to define this again for everybody, I mean, this is one of the, if not the biggest public works projects in the country, and it took a long time to get here. I mean, this is the first new set of train tunnels between New York and New Jersey since Penn Station, the Pennsylvania Railroad, built those old tunnels 115 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a $16 billion job, which isn't just to build the new tunnels, but to then use those to close the old ones, which were damaged in 2012 during Sandy, and repair them. It's a crucial link, not only redundancy, but potentially adding more service between New Jersey and New York. But it's not just for riders. I mean, all this money is going to go towards building trades, labor, companies. It's an economic boon. And I don't know if you know this, but there's a lot of construction workers in New Jersey who might be interested in having those jobs. And when they hear Trump trying to threaten it in the middle of an election season, yeah, that could be a deciding factor for some. Maybe it didn't decide the race, but it certainly helped juice the numbers. I mean, Sherrill did win by a healthy margin.
Remember, we wouldn't even be talking about this if Republican Governor Chris Christie hadn't pulled the plug on a similar project called ARC in 2010. Just a reminder, elections have consequences.
Sure do, yeah. All right, Ramsey, now for something completely different. This week, you met a man who was arrested by the NYPD for flying a motorized paraglider by the Verrazano Bridge. What's this guy's story? Is it even illegal to fly one of these things in New York City?
Well, Sean, his name is Jonathan Warren, but we are calling him the Fan Man.
Okay.
And that's because he flies an aircraft with a motor-powered fan and a parachute.
Okay.
He lives in a Bed-Stuy townhouse and has always told me, he's had a fond appreciation for aviation. So 2 years ago, he buys a $12,000 paramotor and figured out how to fly it in and around the city.
Okay.
And since then, he's performed 33 flights. That's between the city and New Jersey, along Coney Island, Staten Island, and more places. But that all came to a screeching halt when the NYPD arrested him after the marathon on Sunday, charged him with reckless endangerment, and they took his paramotor away from him.
Okay.
So by his account, Warren says he believes that someone had called 911 accusing him of jumping off the Verrazano Bridge. What he was really doing was flying alongside it, as he usually does.
I seem to be the only person that's figured out that this is legal here up until this happened. I think I've been a model aviator in New York City. I think I do this very, very responsibly and very well.
So listen to this. Yeah, Warren insists that he's following federal aviation rules. His paramotor fits under this thing called the ultralight vehicle classification.
Okay.
He has the right radio equipment. He doesn't exceed a certain elevation. And he follows the most critical rule of recreational paramotor operation, and that is what federal aviation law says is he can't fly over any congested areas.
Okay.
While it's not clearly defined, I spoke with an aviation expert who told me that so long he's not right on top of people, if he's not on top of any vessels, he's okay to fly. So that's in New York City's waterways.
Okay.
But ultimately, he doesn't have as much ground with local laws. The NYPD says he violated several of them, but he didn't share which ones. The Fan Man also takes off and lands at Culver Park near Coney Island, but the Parks Department also told me that New Yorkers are not allowed to do that on city parkland.
And the Fan Man's been grounded. They took his fan. He's trying to get his back. He's due back in court on November 22nd, which will start some criminal proceedings. Whether or not a judge is going to decide whether or not he's allowed back in the sky. Could have replica Fan Man. The real question isn't for the law to decide. Is it unnatural for man to fly like this? Are we taunting in the face of God? Is he a local Icarus? Should we be flying? Should we not be flying? Should man be in the sky? Should be on the ground? These are questions that we're going to have to unpack in the weeks and months to come.
Yeah, maybe not flying too close to the sun, but too close to the Verrazano Bridge for sure. That's WNYC Stephen Nesson, Ramsey Khalife, and Clayton Guza. You can stay in the know on all things transit or ask a question of your own by signing up for our weekly newsletter at gothamist.com/ontheway. My friends, thanks so much.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.